But either way, Agenda 2030, they want less countries. They want, continent. If you want a one world government, then you don't want 200 plus countries. You want 7. Wouldn't that be easier? I actually can see how their mindset on that. Oh, this would be way easier. And I'm like, oh man, can you imagine a group of people coming together to exercise their rights and demonstrate against the government of well, the cum nation? I mean, you should have never told me that. That's terrible. But I mean, people from Mexico and the drug cartels coming up to meet the Canadian truckers and land with the American patriots. That would be one heck of a shindig.
I mean, it wasn't that long ago that we were talking about like a Texas, Florida secession type of thing. And it's like, all
Sure.
right, California, Washington, Oregon, you guys go one way and like, let's divvy up the United States in a couple of different countries. I was like, that sounds rad. Like, you know, I think that, people who believe in a certain ideology or the blue people, they can go over here, the red people can go over there. And if you want to live amongst a mix, well, there'll be one of those as well, because I think reconciling in the United States is extremely difficult. I can't imagine any of the liberals are very happy with Trump right now and are not really looking forward to a lot of these ideas. So it's like, let's just get a divorce.
Same thought process has been put out in Canada, right? A Western Canada and Eastern Canada.
Let's do it.
Like whether or not that could ever happen, I don't know. But it's certainly, you want to do all the wacky ideas that are going on in Canada right now. From MAID to like free drugs, right? And um, pronouns, and I mean, we can just get into all the societal problems Canada has. But like, if Eastern Canada wants it all, then just have it, and we'll just be something different over in West where we just don't want that. And if you want to go over there and do those things, great. We don't care. There's just a growing population that definitely doesn't want it. And the issue when you only have one federal government that is calling the shots. I mean, you get what you get, right? Like one of the cool things about watching the United States is it looks to me like each state has just a little bit more independence. And in the provinces, we at times can exercise it, but you got to have a politician that really wants to do that. Otherwise, like we just follow along with whatever the leader of the federal government is talking about. It's been a really interesting thing to watch. I was in a political junkie 6 years ago when I first started podcasting. Certainly, I've become a bit of that, and there's a lot of learning to do to understand how a political system works. I grew up in a hockey world, so when you ask me about the NHL playoffs and who I think is going to win, or maybe the World Juniors or the World Cup or anything to do with the NHL hockey, how it works, the inner dynamics of all the different leagues, all the way down to knee-high kids, I'm like, I completely understand. But like when it comes to politics, even with him walking in and stepping down, like I want your audience to think about this. This just shocks me. So he's intending to resign. I'm going back to Trudeau. Like, okay, that may, all right, sure. And now they're going to have a liberal leadership race. 2 of the people which it sounds like are going to run are not MPs, which means they're not an active government. And they could win. And if they win, Mikkel, they will be the leader of the Liberal Party and the Prime Minister of Canada without being able to sit in government. Do that math for me and make it make sense. And yet, that is Canadian politics. That might be a ton of places. And I'm realizing my audience, because I didn't come from this land of politics. I came from the land of sports, and specifically here in Canada, hockey, like know the ins and outs of pretty much every trade that's happened in the last 30 years. Or at least I know people who do. And I'm learning. And I see Canada as a society learning as well, trying to get caught back up on how their politics actually work so they can push on the buttons to make sure our leaders do the right things. And I see that happen. Like, that's my positive here. The positive on Canada is there's a lot of pissed off people that aren't leaving, they're staying, and they're engaged, and they're learning how things work, learning the basically the terminology of how all these different things work and what they actually mean. And That's really messed up. And they're trying to enact change. Now, whether they can do that over the course of the next year, 10 years, maybe longer, we'll wait and see. But certainly that's the positive. People are engaged and more every single day.
Do you think that for someone to make a positive change, they need to be physically located in Canada and actually like be under the thumb of the government? Like, don't you think that people can leave, regroup from a place of strength and affect change?
Certainly. You look at Tucker Carlson, Jordan Peterson, Elon Musk, probably those three in particular. There's probably more. Joe Rogan, anytime he mentions Canada, I mean, heck, South Park. They can highlight an issue, but it still takes boots on the ground to get it to go the right way. So Tucker Carlson came here, I think it's about a year ago, and brought up with Premier Daniel Smith about the Coots 4 and just brought it up. And he didn't know most of the story, but all of a sudden, a big spotlight went on to what the heck is he talking about? And Jordan Peterson with the pronouns, right? He's living in Florida now. It sounds like he's going to be officially like living there. I don't know if it's citizenship or not, but regardless, he's going to be down there. And he highlights Canada all the time. He just had Pierre Poilievre, which garnered a crazy amount of attention because he's hooked into the Elon Musk, et cetera, et cetera. So absolutely, people can leave and have effect, but it's still going to take boots on the ground, people living there, paying their taxes, fighting for their everyday life in order to continue to move the change where it needs to go.
How do you think paying your taxes is going to help you affect change? You're just feeding the beast.
No, I guess to me, the paying the taxes isn't when I say what I was thinking of with paying the taxes is like, so getting on a board and enacting change. So, when it came to COVID, there was certain things that you started to see were the pressure points in Canada and in my community where 7 people all of a sudden had a lot of power. And you're like, didn't see that coming. And you think if you controlled 4 of them, or not even controlled, just 4 of them had the right mindset, not a big deal. They voted down everything. They did the right things. But we learned really quickly here in Canada that was not the case. And so if you're going to, truly change a country, I guess paying the taxes is you're going to be there and you're probably paying taxes. Can you be in Panama and be on the local school board or the local sports board or the local be a city councilor and these types of kind of like unglorified positions, truthfully?
From my side, the way that I've always thought about it is that our first responsibility is to our family. So I want to protect my kids and I want to get my kids out of harm's way. So I would rather get them out of this Stockholm syndrome abusive relationship with the government, have them in a free and clean place. Don't support the enemy by paying taxes legally. Everything I'm talking about is legal. And then if you want to affect change, you can do so from a place of strength, not a place where they're trying to bankrupt you at every minute and freezing bank accounts and calling you a racist and slandering you and not allowing you to see mainstream or media from outside of the country or alternative media or this online harm acts for children and all this censorship that we saw happening in Canada, which we haven't even got into, which is a huge story on its own. I mean, I would rather get out of all of that kind of stuff. And then if you want to affect things, you can do so in a place of strength.
Yeah, it's one of the I don't disagree with what you're talking about. I just look at our 2 lives as it sits, and we both taken different paths. There's nothing, it's just that's what it is.
Of course.
And I look at it and I go, by staying in Canada, we paint a picture of like everybody's walking around and there's forgive me, folks, but like there's a tranny sitting over there and they're dressed in drag and they're talking to kids, and then somebody's being offered maid over there and pedophiles over here, and the medical system's a tire fire, and I can walk out my door right now. It's a beautiful place. There's lots going on here. And when it comes to family first, I 100% agree. You need a strong marriage, in my opinion. And then that is going to help protect your kids. Education, we talked about this on ours when you were on my side. Homeschooling or your choice of school. One of the ladies that I'm bringing to the next Cornerstone Forum is Kaylin Ford. She's the founder of Alberta Classical Academy. And so in Alberta, you have educational choice of where you put your kids. So some of these ideas are absolutely asinine. I would want my kids nowhere near this. And as parents, you have to, no matter if you're where Mikkel is, where I'm sitting, you have to put that foot forward at all times. You have to be the leader of your house. You have to make the choices that make the most sense for you and your family. You have to protect them. And as far as Canada goes, I just go, if we all leave, and this might not be the right statement. Me and you had this chat like a year ago. If we all leave, does Canada get better? The answer is no, it does not. I don't care what anyone says. Now, does it need to get better? That's a different question, right?
Do you
Does
have a
it need to
responsibility to be the one to make it better?
That's right. But my story is in the middle of COVID, I'm doing a podcast and I'm interviewing. And if you're not a sports fan, I apologize for. I'm going to rattle off some names and you're going to know them or not know them. But like, I'm interviewing Don Cherry and Ron McLean. I'm interviewing Paul Bissonnette from Spit and Chicklets, Glenn Sather, who had his banner retired in Edmonton Oilers. Huge. These are huge hockey names. And then 2021, I'm just dragging my feet because I don't want to talk about it. And finally, I'm like, are we going to talk about this? Or are we not going to talk about this? And so I started talking about it, and then I got a ton of flack. And then I went, listen, folks, I'm not going to talk anything but COVID until we're out of COVID. Now, here I am 4 years later, and I haven't gone back to hockey. I'm talking to Mikkel Thorup instead of, I don't know, Wayne Gretzky or whoever, right? And I just go, if I hadn't have done that, there's a chance somebody else would have. And there were other people doing it. But I certainly know the ripple effect I had by starting to do it, just by the people who've reached out, the rooms I've been put in. Like as it sits today in a court case, my podcast is being referenced, which is really strange. But people are facing consequences for the actions they took at Coots and in Ottawa. And do I side with them? Yeah, like almost 100%. Yes, I went to Ottawa and witnessed the Freedom Convoy. But that's my path. And every day I think about it, like, do you leave? Do you go somewhere else? I'm like, I really, really love this community. And if I come to wherever I go, my wife's from Minnesota. If I went to Minnesota, I'd try and do the same thing in Minnesota. And probably what's going to happen is I'm disagreeable. And I'm probably not going to like things. I'm probably going to start talking about them. I'm probably going to ruffle some tail feathers. And so I go, why not ruffle the tail feathers in the country that I love, in the province that I've grown to love, in the community that I know like is the most beautiful place, even though it's 2 hours east of the edge of the world. This place is worth fighting for. And and at any point, if my kids come in the crossfire of that, I'm going to have a very different choice to make. But right now, my wife and I continue to make choices to shield them from the insanity of the world. And I would say the community helps protect what I do by shielding me from some of the insanity of the world. And it's I don't know if that answers it, but certainly you can go anywhere in the world and talk about any issue and still be very effective. Just look at Elon Musk berating Great Britain right now. That's pretty wild to watch, and he's having an effect for certain. He is. So there, I just all of us have different paths to take. Is I guess my long-winded answer.
No, I love it. I 100% like I never try to convince anybody of anything. I try to present things. I try to present alternatives. This is my opinion. This is the way that I see the world. This is what I've learned of 25 years of exploration around the planet. And then, I just invite people. Like if you're on my newsletter at expatmoney.com or, I'll just say like, here, I'm inviting you to this. Come down, take a look around, have a look and see if what I'm saying is true. Is it not true? Make up your own mind. And it's a standing on invitation. Like I would love to host you down here in Panama. I'd love for you to take a look around, see what it's like.
And in fairness, I want to come. Like the thing about it is I may be Shaun in 5 years, looking back on this Shaun, arguing to me right now, or having a discussion and being like, it's completely wrong. Or it's completely right. Or it doesn't matter. Because one of the reasons I brought you was people wanted that answer. They wanted that option. I'm a guy about options. I think your idea of plan B is brilliant. You should always have options. If you don't have options, that's how you're going to get, in the last couple of years, in the darkest sense, a lot of people who did things against their will, and I'm talking about the mandates in Canada, did so because they didn't think they had any options. They
Right.
held their job over their head and they had no option. And so they went and they got it and they've regretted it, or they've had medical consequences because of it. And so I'm all about options. And I love the plan B. The plan B makes complete sense to me. As stalwart I am, if all of a sudden I looked out my window and the CIA, please CIA, not I know you like regardless. I joke a little bit, but like if all of a sudden I looked out and they were ready to take me away in a black bag, I think my tune would change a little bit. I can easily say that. But I don't know, Mikkel. I'm right now where I sit, I see a lot of hope in Canada. It doesn't mean there isn't going to be ridiculously tough times. They're coming, and we're probably right in the middle of it.
I mean, the message that I have is very succinct and through all of this. Everybody needs to protect their downside. That's all I'm asking. Protect your downside, have a plan B, have something in place, especially if you are going to be an outspoken podcaster like yourself, or if you're looking at succeeding, Alberta succeeding from the rest of the country, or business owners who are not going to follow mandates or anything like this, or you're going to make a big stink in politics. You better have a backup plan, because if they come for you, you want somewhere you can go. You need bank accounts, you need
I was
access to funds, you need you need a residency, a passport, like have that stuff. And then, if you're going to do all of this stuff, then at least do it from a place of strength. That's all
I
that's all I'm
agree.
talking.
Listen, I this is why we get along so well, is because of what you're talking. I agree about it. I just had a guy on the podcast. Well, actually, it comes out I think just after this, but regardless, it's coming out on the podcast right away. And Larry, and I'm forgetting his last name. That's terrible. He spent 30 years, or has spent 30 years, of Larry Hancock. He spent 30 years writing books about JFK, the assassination of him. And the last one he's written is about Lee Harvey Oswald. And I don't know. I'm sure you got listeners who know this story inside and out. I'll be the first to put my hand up and say, folks, I'm interested in all different aspects of society, history, how things work. Obviously, an assassination of a president is a pretty big deal. And he walked me through it. And when you're talking about being an outspoken podcaster, Lee Harvey Oswald was an outspoken, I'm just going to say TikTok influencer, but to put it in today's standards, who was on radio shows before it happened. He was speaking about wanting to get to Cuba back in the Cuban Missile Crisis. He wanted communism. He'd been to Soviet Russia. He'd lived there. He had military background. And from all accounts of what Larry walked me through, he was a sharp individual, which means he was not dumb. But then, the CIA decided they could use him for something, and they started to, not mold him, but encourage him in his thought process. And then the guy ends up in jail for assassinating the president. Then he ends up dead, and he's gone down as the guy who killed JFK. You can believe or unbelieve everything I just said. All you're saying, and why I bring up the story, is like at no point in time should you not be thinking about options and about being strategic and going like, if I'm going to continue to do this, and I'm talking about myself now, where I continue to call out the insanity of Canada, well, you're probably in a couple crosshairs, Shaun, and maybe you should talk to Mikkel a bit more. And Mikkel, folks, is probably not wrong.